Hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is RegWatch by RegulatorWatch.com. Protest over the BC provincial government's controversial $8.8 billion Site C hydroelectric dam is heating up, with First Nations and environmental groups launching a new wave of opposition just as construction crews begin to break ground. Site C is said to be the largest construction project ever to be built in the province, and the BC Liberal government says it's much needed in order to provide a reliable, plentiful, and sustainable source of affordable clean energy for the next 100 years. Joining us today to provide a counterpoint to the government's argument is Gwen Barlee, National Policy Director of the Wilderness Committee, which since 1988 has been at the forefront of efforts to protect and preserve wildlife and wilderness, and quite successfully, I might add. Thanks for joining us.
My
Gwen.
pleasure.
So first off, tell us a little bit about the Wilderness Committee and why it's opposed to Site C.
Well, the Wilderness Committee is an environmental organization that was founded around a kitchen table in 1980 in British Columbia. And today we've grown to 30,000 members and 30,000 supporters. And what we do, our primary campaigns are protecting wilderness and wildlife. And so Site C is bad from a lot of perspectives. I mean, there's big concerns about the impact on First Nations title and rights. There is a big impact and concern about the fact that it would wipe out thousands of hectares of Class A agricultural land. There are real concerns about the price tag on Site C. It's $8.8 billion right now.
That surprises me, though, to hear the price tag issue come from opposition, from what I consider to be the environmental left. Why do you care about how much it costs? It's clean energy, isn't it?
Well, one of the concerns is with the price tag is BC Hydro, we consider to be one of our best tools against climate change. They've clearly been given their marching orders on Site C to go ahead and build it. And when you have a project of this magnitude, it could put BC Hydro in jeopardy unless you're increasing electricity prices for people by 30 to 40%. And so it's all part of the package about looking at Site C and saying, do we need this project? Did it have proper regulatory oversight? What are the impacts to First Nations? What are the impacts to our agricultural land reserve and food security? And when you look at all those things, you realize really quickly that Site C isn't a good idea at all. And it's not just the Wilderness Committee saying that. You have Harry Swain, who was the chair of the Joint Panel Review, and he actually said the BC government's refusal to look at alternatives to Site C was a dereliction of duty. And then you had Mark Ilson, who's the CEO or former CEO of BC Hydro, and he's also on the record. And he said it would have, if Site C goes ahead, it would have a devastating impact on electricity prices for average citizens in British Columbia.
Is hydroelectric power considered clean energy by the environmental movement?
Well, you actually have a variety of opinions within the environmental sector because we aren't a monolithic body. And so you can definitely say that hydroelectricity is low carbon, but you couldn't say it's clean and green when you're talking about projects that have the massive impact that Site C would have. And so
but isn't that splitting hairs?
No, I don't think it is. I think that's being truthful. I think sometimes people want this umbrella definition of low carbon power, and all low carbon power is therefore green and clean. And it's simply not, and Site C is a case in point. That sure, it produces low carbon hydroelectricity, but it floods 107 kilometers of valley bottom.
But no major industrial project has no impact. They all have impact.
You're right.
So I mean, if you had Run a River, which you have small projects, but that's then what, 100 rivers get impacted, or 100 different spots, right? So when it comes to like getting energy, isn't it better to do it all in one big dam project? When I look at the Site C project, I see that it's actually recycling energy and power that has gone through the two previous dams.
The thing that you'd need to ask with Site C, do we need the power? Do we need the electricity? And the answer is no. And if we needed the electricity, the first thing you would do, you'd embrace conservation, and BC Hydro says we can do a better job.
BC Hydro is already award-winning, though.
Absolutely, but we still have a long ways to go. And then you'd say, okay, let's say we do need that electricity. Well, let's revisit the Columbia River Treaty. And we store water for the Americans, and they produce power, and we're entitled to benefits from that. And we can get power back that's equivalent to the amount of power produced by Site C. We are concerned about the impact on wilderness and wildlife. We are concerned about First Nations title and rights. But when people are making a decision in British Columbia, They deserve to have the straight goods in front of them. They deserve to have the ability to make an informed decision. And part of making that informed decision is understanding, why are we spending $10 billion on a project that is not needed, that has oversight removed, and you have experts with BC Hydro and the joint panel review that are saying this is a bad idea.
The joint review panel, in the end, came out and approved the project
They said
with
there
mitigation.
wasn't a case
with mitigation.
They said the government hadn't shown that there was a case to go ahead with Site C.
From the panel. While the report finds that BC Hydro needs to do a better job of forecasting power demand in relation to future pricing, it states that BC will need capacity at some point, and the benefits are clear. Quote, the project would provide a large and long-term increment of firm energy and capacity at a price that would benefit future generations. It would do this in a way that would produce a vastly smaller burden of greenhouse gases than any alternative save nuclear power. Well, and that came from the joint panel.
They made 50 recommendations, and one of the overarching conclusions that they came to is that BC Hydro hadn't shown that there was a compelling need for Site C. They also recommended that Site C go to the BC Utilities Commission for their expert oversight and advice and analysis. And the government has exempted Site C, which will be a $10 billion project, more than that, from BCUC oversight. Who are the experts? Who are the regulators? Who are asking the question, do we need the power, and what will it cost the BC public?
So if the BCUC had reviewed this project and came out and stamped it in approval, you guys
we still have a serious problem with it, obviously, as environmentalists.
Your whole position here is to say, go crack open a treaty with the United States of America. 50 years from now, we lost our opportunity to do anything with Site C, and we relied on getting power through the largesse of the Americans. And they decide that they don't want to do that anymore, and they need all of their power, and they're going to take our power too. Why would you want to put our future in the hands of Americans?
Let's fast forward 50 years. We've conserved, as BC Hydro recommended, that we're 50% more energy conscious and more energy efficient. That we revisited our entitlement, BC's entitlement under the Columbia River Treaty, and we get that entitlement back in electricity, and the same amount of electricity that would be used, that would be produced by Site C. We explore geothermal, and we find that geothermal is actually a reliable source of electricity that is beneficial to British Columbia. And we don't go ahead, and we've never gone ahead with wasting billions of taxpayers' dollars on Site C.
I'm just shocked the left wants to put all the faith in our future in Donald Trump.
Nice try.